Well, hello again folks, and I hope yous are all still in good form, hey. As you can see, I'm back out round the farm sheds again, looking for feral pigeons. This time though, the calves have been moved out of the shed, so I don't have to worry about keeping the door shut. I didn't see any birds in the shed with the combine in it, which is unusual, but I've spotted one in the shed where the calves were that should be within range. The rangefinder was telling me it was about a 30-yard shot, so I aimed dead on, right between the shoulder blades. There were a few more in the shed, some up in the gutter, and below an overhang from the other shed, and one on the back wall, which was probably about 50 yards away, which was pushing it a wee bit too far for my liking. So I decided to gingerly nip through this shed and through another open doorway into a much smaller shed where I might be able to get a shot at a jackdaw outside the cattle house. And sure enough they were there, about 35 yards away. Now I have shot them from here before, but unfortunately this time, with the cattle feeding in the background, I decided not to take the shot. If they had been standing a little further outside the door, I would have taken the shot on, but there's always another day. So instead I decided to see if I could stalk a little closer to the pigeons near the back wall of the shed. Now obviously the birds can't see me as there's no cover here, so I'm just trying to gingerly work my way up the shed to get within a sensible range without spooking them. It was a good hit, but the bird still managed to fly down the shed and slam headlong into the corrugated tin of the shed next door. Before walking round to the other shed, I picked up the first bird that I shot. I set it down at the usual spot to pick up later. Then made my way through the cattle house to get to the big shed with straw bales in it. Once there, I took my time, looking along all the beams and trusses for any signs of pigeons, as they're very good at hiding in dark spots. And it wasn't too long before I spotted the first one, up against the far wall. Then another one, up on a big beam. Then a third one. This one was hard to see, as it had tucked itself into the shadows, round the back of one of the big trusses, right up at the ridge. I actually thought that's all there was, so gingerly started to make my way forward to pick them up, only to spot a fourth one that I hadn't seen before. Unfortunately, it was a lot wiser than its mates and cleared off just before I managed to get the shot off. But at the next corner I spotted a fifth one. It was actually in the adjacent shed where I started. It must have came in after I had left to go to this shed. Thankfully though, I could just about get a shot at it. Even though the silo is really well covered in here, you can see the mess the birds are making on it. Not surprising, up above there's a nest. There's always been a nest up at that spot, and as you can see with this smashed eggshell, they definitely have been breeding. One of the birds that I'd shot hit the floor so hard its crop bust open. Look at all that barley in there. Just think, each of these birds is eating that, if not more, every day. That's food that's supposed to be going to the cattle. I picked up the birds that I'd shot, then walked round to the other adjoining shed to look for the last bird. But couldn't find it, so decided to look outside, as sometimes the birds will get out through one of the vents before dropping dead. And sure enough, I found it out in the field. There. Oh, a bad place to shot. Still got this distance. It does surprise me sometimes how far they can get, even with a well-placed shot. I set it beside the first bird I'd shot for later, though for the life of me I'm not sure why I didn't lift the two of them and add them to the pile of birds I had in the other shed. Anyway, I found somewhere comfy to sit, overlooking the cattle shed, hoping that I might be able to get a shot at a jackdaw or two, when I heard something fluttering in behind me. So I snuck in round the back of the silage trailer, hoping that I might be able to spot what it was. Yep, another feral, up on the top of the beam again. Thankfully, it dropped on the spot, so I added it to the pile of birds I had in this shed. Why again I didn't put them all into one pile, I do not know. A little while later, I noticed a lot of flapping noise coming from the cattle house, so I nipped round the back of the silage trailer to see if I could get a better view of what it was. It seemed to be two pigeons up in one of the trusses, either fighting the bit out or trying to get in the family way. I'm not sure which, as it was quite dark. But while they were somewhat distracted, I managed to get into a better shooting position off of the gate. But even though the tacticam seemed to struggle in the low light, I could still see the birds through the scope, and managed to get a good hit on one. Now, by this stage, it wasn't too far away from sunset, and I could hear this overwhelming noise coming from the shed that used to house the calves in. So, decided to have a look-see, but on my way there, the sound of flapping caught my ear. Yep, that was another feral up on the beams. Again, the tacticam seemed to be having trouble recording in the low light, but I still had no problem seeing the birds through the scope. before I went to pick the bird up, I decided to investigate what was causing all that noise. It was starlings, hundreds of them, coming in to roost before dark. This was obviously where all the bird dung in the calf shed was coming from, and there's not a thing I can do about it, as since the start of this year, starlings were taken off of our general licences here in Northern Ireland, so technically they're protected. Anyhow, before I left, I retrieved that last pigeon I shot, gingerly making my way up and down the silage cover, trying not to put any holes in it, as that really would get the farmer annoyed. Well folks, that's the end of another one. I usually at this point show you a picture of all the birds I've shot, but when I went to go back and get the birds I put at the beam, they were gone. Not a sign of them. Now I've never seen any cats in this farm, but something definitely decided it wanted them more than I did. Can't complain really. If I'd have seen it, I would have given it the rest of the birds. But anyway, take care folks and look after yourselves, hey.